Hi everyone, my name is Rachel and I teach IB English A here at Royal IB. Today, I would like to share with you some tips that you can use to achieve a higher score in your individual oral. Before we begin, we need to understand what the individual oral is. As you know already, the IB English A assessment is made up of a few components. Paper 1, Paper 2, IO, and for HL students, your HL essay. Now, the IO is 30% of the final grade for SL students and 20% of the final grade for HL students. The IO is 15 minutes long, and the first 10 minutes are spent on an oral commentary. In this part, you will be analyzing or evaluating the texts that you have chosen, and then you'll end the IO with a 5-minute discussion of your presentation with the teacher. The IO is internally assessed, which means your school teacher will listen to you and give you a score. And your IO will be recorded and sent to the IB, where they will moderate your score again. Before we begin, we need to understand the marking rubrics for the IO. This helps you to focus on what you need to do to achieve a good score. Like the other components in the IB English A exam, there are 4 criteria: criterion A, B, C, and D. Criterion A, knowledge, understanding, and interpretation. This criterion wants you to show knowledge and understanding of the texts and show how the texts are relevant to the global issue. For criterion B, you will be asked to analyze and evaluate the presentation of your global issue through authorial choices. Authorial choices are the techniques, for example, figurative language in a novel, or camera angle in a photograph, for example. For criterion C, coherence, balance, focus, and organization. So here would be concerns like, is your IO over the time limit? Does your IO spend equal amount of time on each section? In criterion D, language, you will be given a score based on your use of vocabulary, your tone, your word choices, your grammar, and things like that. Now, let's look at some tips for each criterion, and I'll start with criterion A. To do well in criterion A, you want to show that you understand the meaning and significance of each extract. So you do not just want to focus on superficial things that happen in the text. You want to show why these are significant on a deeper level. You must also show how the text is situated or related to the full text or body of work. Now, what is the full text? So, for example, if you chose an extract from a novel, the novel will be your full text. Now, if you chose a poem, other poems in the collection by the same poet will be the body of work. Similarly, if you chose a photograph or an art piece, other photos by the same photographer will be the body of work. Now, you also need to explain how the extract and body of work express your global issue. And as you present, you need to make many references to the extracts to support your explanations. Now, criterion B, analysis. The first tip I have for you is that you need to focus on explaining and evaluating the writer's choices. So, for example, if the writer chose to use a metaphor or a high camera angle, you want to explain why the writer has done this. So this would be the writer's purpose. You also want to explain the impact on the audience in relation to the global issue. So explain how this makes the audience feel about the global issue. You also want to show how the writer's language and organizational choices help them to effectively convey important ideas about the global issue. You can also focus on tone and how this tone communicates the global issue. You also want to show how these types of authorial choices can be found in the whole work or the body of work. Basically, you want to show how there is a similarity between the extract and the body of work. Now, how do you analyze for criterion B? I recommend a close analysis for extract analysis. So when you analyze the extracts, choose specific quotes, specific visual techniques, if you have a photograph or an artwork or something like that, or images. So focus on the details. Now, when you analyze the body of work, I recommend the wide analysis. So you're going to zoom out and focus on recurring. Recurring means things that you see again and again. Okay, so these things would be motifs, themes, or techniques that come up a lot in the body of work. Now, for criterion C, organization and balance. Now, you need to have an outline to create your I/O. If you're not sure what this is, or if you do not have an outline, I will be able to provide you with an outline. I will talk about this again later. You also want to provide equal time and focus on each extract and each body of work. So during classes with me, I'll be showing you how to organize your analysis. Now, the listener must be able to follow your argument. This means you need clear transitions, transition phrases or words between your points and references. Now, it must be very clear that you have planned carefully and practiced your I/O before presenting. So make sure you sound natural, you sound energetic and confident, and you're not sounding like a robot or someone who has memorized the script. Now, here are some outlines I use with my students. So as you can see on the left, I help them to figure out the global issue. We will also write down in the introduction elements like this. We will also talk about how many minutes we will allocate for each section. This is in the colored boxes on the right. And then in the last image at the bottom right, you can see that I give some guiding questions, to help students structure the content in the individual component. So this helps them to write the script easily. For criterion D, language. The first thing, avoid using slang. Now, this is a formal presentation. So try not to say, like, or or phrases like this. Speak in complete sentences with correct grammar. Speak with confidence and energy. And maintain your own natural voice and manner. Now, you are not allowed to read your outline, so you cannot sound like a robot or seem like you're memorizing or repeating something. Now, what goes into your I/O content? Now, there are 4 big parts: the literary text, an extract from a literary text that is 40 lines maximum, the non-literary body of work, and an extract from the non-literary body of work. So these would be 4 components. How do you choose a text? This is an area where a lot of students have difficulty with. Now, selecting the good texts or the most appropriate text is very important. because it impacts your analysis. So the first thing you need to think about is, do I have two texts that show a common global issue? And then, do my chosen extracts relate to the global issue? Now, here is a super important tip, the length of the extract. As I mentioned earlier, your extract is a maximum of 40 lines. Now, many students have asked me this, is doing 40 lines the best choice? And my answer is no. You have to cover the whole extract. What does this mean? So, for example, if you chose 40 lines and only analyzed 25 lines, you are not showing a full understanding of the whole text because you have not analyzed the rest of it. This affects your score for criterion A. So, if 28 lines or 32 lines does the job, do that. You don't need 40 lines. So, cut down on your number of lines if you cannot include everything in your analysis. On the other hand, if you need more analysis and evidence, add a bit more lines in there. Now, a good extract will have a wide variety of literary or visual and structural techniques. So try to pick extracts that have all these things there to deepen your analysis. Now, the next thing, the basis or the main point of the I.O. is the global issue. You can think of the global issue as your thesis or the thing that you're trying to show in your I.O. discussion. Now, the global issue is global and an issue. What does this mean? Global suggests that you have to discuss something that affects people on a wide scale around the world. So discussing a problem only in Korea or in a certain country will not be a global issue. Now, the word issue then implies that this is going to be a problem that affects people on a daily basis or an everyday basis. So basically, a problem that affects people around the world, a common problem for the global population. And again, the global issue is important because this is the thesis or the main focus of your I.O. There are 5 themes that the IB has provided for your global issue. And this will help you to narrow down your global issue. The first one is culture, identity, and community. The second one says beliefs, values, and education. The third is politics, power, and justice. The next one says art, creativity, and the imagination. And the last one, science, technology, and the environment. So you can pick a big theme from here and then zoom into the issue that you want to focus on. Now, how do you zoom in then? This can be very difficult for many students. So in my classes, I use global issue frames like this, and these are a few examples. So we can look at the impact of something on something. So this would show the problem and the impact. So for example, the impact of oppressive political regimes on women's freedom of choice. So this would apply for a text like Persepolis, for example, the graphic novel. Now you want to take note that my keywords in the global issue are very specific: oppressive political regimes, women's freedom of choice. It's not vague, it's very specific. Compare this to the impact of political regimes on women. That's more vague, and your texts might not show that accurately. Example 2, the relationship between A and B. So for a text like Shakespeare's Macbeth, for example, you can say something like this: the relationship between political power and individual ambition. Again, the keywords are very focused. The next example, A as a source or a force of B. My example is the need to conform to societal expectations as a source of conflict in the family unit. Again, my keywords are very focused so that I can focus my analysis in my text and body of work analysis. Now, what happens in an IO class with me? Firstly, we will spend some time discussing and formulating a global issue that you want to discuss. And then we will select the texts and extracts that you want to use in your IO. After this, we will go into writing and editing your IO script. So I will look over this with you and discuss what would be possible content and things like that. After that is done, in step 4, we will time the IO script. Remember, we do not want to go over 10 minutes. And we will write the bullet points if you need to. The bullet points are the list of 10 points that you're allowed to bring with you into the exam hall. Step 5, we have some final edits and rehearsals. Now, what goes in the rehearsals? Now, I will listen to your speech and see if it goes well. I will also discuss the questions for the 5-minute discussion. Remember, as I mentioned earlier, the IO is 15 minutes. After your 10-minute presentation, you have a 5-minute discussion. Now, what is the purpose of this discussion? Your teacher will ask you to elaborate or give more examples on what you have said already. You will be asked to explore the text further. Now, some examples of questions that we will discuss and will prepare you for your IO. For example, you said this in your presentation. Why is this global issue significant and relevant? So you have to show me why you selected this global issue and why it is important for the world today. Secondly, you said this. How does this work reflect the context in which it was written? So you need to show you understand the historical and cultural context of the work. Next, you said this. How does this work reflect the writer's bias? So is the writer biased towards the global issue? Is he or she only showing a certain perspective that might not be accurate? You're going to evaluate for that. Next, you said this in your presentation. Why do you think the writer uses that particular technique or authorial choice to convey the message? So here, you want to evaluate the writer's purpose. How accurate is the text in presenting the global issue? Does it show an accurate portrayal? Is it a fair portrayal? So please evaluate and judge that for me. Next, how do the works present the global issue in similar or different ways? This question wants you to compare and contrast. Are they similar? Are they different? How and why? Lastly, which text is more effective in presenting the global issue? So this again is a compare and contrast question where you are asked to judge effectiveness. Which text shows the global issue better? So in classes, we will definitely practice questions like this. These are only a few examples. I will have more to discuss with you in class. Now, some tips for the discussion. How long should you spend answering each question your teacher asks? My answer is 1 minute to 1.5 minutes for each response. Now, some students have previously asked me, shouldn't I spend 4 minutes on a response to show that I have a deep understanding and I'm able to answer the question very well? And my answer is not really, because if you spend 3 to 4 minutes on one question, that would really limit the number of questions you get, and you might not be able to show a deeper knowledge of the texts. So try to answer 3 to 5 questions, 1 minute to 1.5 minutes. Now, as you saw earlier, the questions were very broad. So this means that you need to know your texts very well. And the context, the history, the culture, things that happen in that time period very well also. So what are some revision strategies? Now, in your 2 years in IBDP, you will study a variety of literary and non-literary texts. So as you revise, list down important quotes from the literary texts. Annotate them. Organize the quotes by themes or by characters or global issue. You can also list down or note down global issues from each chapter or scene in your texts. You can also note down other similar examples in the text that show the same global issues. And this would really save you time and trouble when preparing for the I.O. in future, because you have all these ideas and evidence ready to go. And this is it for me. I hope this has been helpful, and thank you very much for listening to me today.